Hi everyone. So what I'm going to go through today, we're going to have a look at the lecture and the seminar. Really, unfortunately, we were going to have Lansana Primary School, and this session was going to be led by Kelly Watkins, who's a lead for numeracy across the foundation phase. She's absolutely brilliant. She's written this lecture. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a brief outline of what Kelly was going to go through with the children. And then I'm going to talk about the seminar and ask you some questions and give you some things to think about with developing numeracy across the foundation phase. Just wanted to say a huge thanks for being so patient and flexible during this time. Obviously, it's new to all of us. So on with the lecture. So we're looking at numeracy across the foundation phase. Just to echo some of the things that I've said in the last few numeracy sessions, obviously, the first few years of a child's life are really important to mathematical development, and it's that whole side, and I know Kelly was really passionate about talking about how teachers talk about maths and numeracy, and if they're passionate and if they're enthusiastic about the subject, that'll definitely come across with the children. So Kelly was going to point out here, obviously, the huge role that foundation phase plays with developing mathematical understanding in children. Here, obviously, we've talked about this before, but numeracy, what this is, and obviously then the importance within the early years. Obviously, this PowerPoint is available for you to look at in your own time without me rambling over the top of it. I'm just going to point some things out throughout. One of the things she was going to talk about was the 6 key areas of early mathematical learning, which are here. And this podcast by Podbean, absolutely brilliant. Definitely take some time out to have a listen to that. And this goes into these 6 areas in more detail. There's a handout here by the Education Endowment Foundation. Absolutely brilliant. This is all based on research, and this would be really good for your blog. Have a look at the Education Endowment Foundation. This is all, like I mentioned, based on research, and it might link to any other modules that you've got as well. So definitely worth looking at the website there. But there's a handout you can have a look at here. So she obviously talked about the 5 key recommendations in further detail. And again, just to reiterate what I've been saying over the past few weeks is, just everyday experiences of maths, making them into part of a daily routine, making them fun, trying to bring in maths and getting children to talk about math and numeracy. So through puzzles, songs, rhymes, puppets, just so they're used to talking and thinking about maths in their everyday. There's an exercise here that Kelly's going to get you to do in terms of how many can you name, and this is a handout you can have a look at in your own time. One of the things I know that they use a lot in Lansana Primary School is using this series, which is called Number Blocks, which is a cartoon which the children absolutely love, and it brings this idea of characters and numbers, and it links really well to our numeracy through storytelling session. Obviously here, this is how learners engage with number, as outlined by Bruna. And then Kelly talks about the making connections in mathematics and how the brain learns. So I'm just flicking through here. What I want to just highlight is, obviously, when planning within the foundation phase, there's all these different provisions that you need to plan for. So whether you haven't been in the foundation phase before, it's really important to stress that obviously continuous provision is when resources in areas for children and they can freely explore. Enhanced provision is usually under a theme, and it's usually more challenging resources. There's obviously adult-led focused activities where adults are there to support and to monitor and to observe the children. And then there's their own child-led activities where children can pick up objects, pick up resources, and engage with them within the numeracy session. So some examples here from their school of some of the continuous maths provision that they provided. More examples here across the foundation phase from school. Obviously, we're going to look at this for next week, which is the outdoor maths provision. And the outdoors can play a huge role within numeracy as well. Here's some examples here of how the outdoors is used to reinforce ideas of numbers. And then obviously the enhanced maths provision, just to challenge them more, and really about hands-on, practical, trying to make maths fun. Some examples here. So within the lecture handouts, there's a series of documents you can have a look at there. Definitely worth having a look at the numeracy framework that she's included, which shows the progression levels across the framework for the foundation phase. Kelly's going to talk to you about, again, cross-curricular real-life experiences. So whether through the role-play area of a shop, handling money, as we talked about last week, thinking about how you can bring in real life to just reinforce messages of numeracy, reasoning, problem solving, give them hands-on ideas. Again, within the handouts, there's something here from Estim, which goes into more detail of their expectations. And there's some really good ideas here in terms of a pop-up bakery, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and how you can include measure there. And this pupils discover dinosaur bones, again, bringing that idea of reasoning in. There's some really good hub resources, which again, just give you an idea of what is being suggested by Welsh Government to reinforce number across the foundation phase. And what we're going to look at within the seminar, which we'll have a look at in a moment, is just how midterm and weekly planning is potentially different to Key Stage 2. Kelly's provided you with the planning that they use within the foundation phase and how they track numeracy skills across the curriculum. Obviously, within the foundation phase, it's going to be very different. A number of, especially the younger children, are still learning to write, to read. So they'll demonstrate their numeracy through different ways, maybe through counting out loud, through oracy, rather than just the typical that you'd see in Key Stage 2, writing down or recording numbers. Something that you make a lot of use at within Lansana Primary is Seesaw, and this is really common across a lot of schools, in that it involves the parents as well. So they can share across this app what they've been doing within books, what they've been doing within the foundation phase, and then parents are very aware of what methods they're using, and they can reinforce messages at home as well. And obviously, when you've got the adult-led provision, these are the observation notes. This is what the TAs or the teachers will be using to keep a track of the numeracy skills for these children. So that was the lecture. Going on swiftly to the seminar now, which we're going to do. Real shame this week that we're not in uni. So we were going to be going into the school experience room. They'd set up the room with a number of books. So we've been really exploring how numeracy can be developed through stories, and we're exploring data handling. So again, we're going to discuss what is numeracy. I think it's really, really important that we leave this year and you have a good understanding of the difference between numeracy and mathematics. Obviously, within the foundation phase, play is hugely important. And as Kelly said in her lecture, and we're going to explore in this session, it's just that number can be developed through play, through role play, whether it's, as a florist or a shop, or them actually handling maths. Could be through non-traditional means of, developing it through stories, listening to stories, singing, adding, games. It doesn't have to be through a textbook and traditional means. And it's about, again, what we've talked about before, making numeracy fun. So I'll let you look at this in your own time. This is number blocks. This is something that's used within a number of schools, and this usually gives a focus for the session. So number blocks, they're numbers that are made into characters, and they usually get into all scrapes and japes you can imagine. But it's an example of multimodality and how it's taught, and how it's used to introduce numbers to the early years. So within the foundation phase, Your role as a teacher is you're teaching them, their first expectations, their first introduction to number. And many preschool children possess considerable implicit mathematical knowledge and experience through their parents, through their experience through life. So it's really important that this is reinforced throughout the foundation phase. This is where the learner begins their journey within mathematics. So it's really important to provide these first-hand experiences that are fun, and they should be encouraged to discuss with not only adults but also their peers about using this maths language. The importance of doing this is so they start to internalize their experiences, and they then could move on to potentially drawing, making marks, again, all helping them to develop their numeracy. Commonly, we're not going to break out into song here, but commonly numeracy is developed through song. It's about repetition. It's about learning through repetition and making it fun. They're songs that you can take home and learn with parents, and also that can be done in the outdoors and part of our daily routine. But again, it's that repetition of numbers, really important that they get an idea of the prime numbers from just 1 to 10 in the early years. So Whitbread talks about this idea of emergent numeracy and developing an idea of numbers by playing around with them, just having first-hand experience of them, of counting things, of talking about them, not just to others, but to adults as well. And then just being able to represent mathematical understanding through, as I've mentioned, drawing or counting things. It's all about enabling children to construct their own understanding in their own way. So some children might want to draw, some children might want to make marks, some children might want to ask or speak to adults or speak to their peers, but it's all about giving these opportunities within the enhanced or continuous provision and giving a range of opportunities so this emergent numeracy can appear. Here, obviously, we've got some Welsh Government guidance to what foundation phase pedagogy should and could be, and definitely we've talked about this in the lecture very, very briefly, but take some time to have a look at these, because this is important. If you want to start to teach in the foundation phase, get an understanding of what enhanced provision and how it's different to continuous provision is really important. So what we're going to do in the session was we're going to explore numeracy through stories. And this is really, really important. And if you have a look at the folder for the seminar, I've given you, there's 6 or 7 books that we suggest. And we were going to get you to look at these stories, read them together, and start to think about how can numeracy be developed through story and why. This is the task you're going to have, and again, we wanted you to look and engage with the numeracy framework and think about what progression steps you'd be meeting. So in your own time, have a look at the different books that we've suggested, have a look at the lesson plans that have been suggested, think about how you would adapt that, how you would change that, how you can make it more fun. There's some really helpful web pages. There's Math Through Stories, which obviously is a brilliant resource for helping develop numeracy across the foundation phase. Also, on that folder, I've given you an idea of how Lansana Primary use foundation phase planning. Obviously, it's very different to Key Stage 2. So have a look at that as well. So if you were going to plan developing numeracy, so maybe you're just developing how children can count to 10 or how they can count in pairs, and you're going to use a book to use that, have a quick look at using one of the foundation phase planners from Lansana and think about structuring it on one of those plans. We are finally then going to have a look at data handling across the curriculum. Surely you remember the days of when you asked your peers in school, what was your favourite fruit or what was your favourite crisps? I'll never forget the lesson. It was gold. We found out what was your favourite crisps. Space Raiders obviously always had it, and then we demonstrated that with a pictogram, a tally chart, and a bar graph, and I still remember it today. But it's really important to give children these range of handling data and including them. So a lot of these questions are going to come from the children. If they're interested in it, obviously they're going to be more engaged. So again, thinking about ways that we could collect data, maybe things that you've seen on practice or in your own experience. So once you've collected the data, then we looked at this in the first session, but human maths is a really good way of helping to reinforce ideas. So as you can see on the top picture here, this is a bar graph, a human bar graph. So you've got your scale, you might have a child lying down there who'd be on the other axis, and then you've got these representations of the bars here. Again, by doing this, they're experiencing, it's fun, experiential learning, and it's representing these values within the graph and can reinforce and help children's understanding. Obviously, again, some theory to why data handling is so important. But it's that understanding of it's bringing maths to life. It's that handling real data and introducing maybe simple computer software. There's some really good resources on Hub. Maybe as you go into year 1 and especially year 2, you'd start to introduce those to children. There's the references. I've flown through that, but what I'd encourage you to do is just to look at the handouts, have a good read through Kelly's lecture, have a look then through some of the stories that are suggested. And if you wanted to, especially for your blog, you could start to plan an activity with a book of how you develop number. If you've got any questions, if you've got any queries, especially blog related, please get in touch with your seminar tutor or myself. Stay safe. Speak soon.